examine how this war will turn out, okay? So, I've said this many times, but the Americans are losing this war. And the main reason is the problem of hubris. And so I want to examine closely what this means strategically, what this means on the battlefield, okay? So war is fought across 4 dimensions, all right? There is the narrative dimension, meaning global opinion, how history will perceive this war. There is the political dimension, meaning how your allies perceive this war, how your domestic base perceive this war. There's the economic, and then there's the military. If we examine this war closely, the Iranians are fighting a very different war from the Americans. What the Americans are doing is basically they are shifting the narrative, political sphere, and economic sphere to fit their economic strategy, okay? Their economic strategy is decapitation, which forces surrender, right? So what they want to do is they want to not destroy the Iranian leadership, destroy the Iranian economy to force a surrender, in which case the Americans can dictate terms. That is their strategy, and that's about it. And they are forcing the narrative space, the political space, and the economic space to conform to the military strategy, meaning that they expect the allies, NATO, they expect the media, they expect the economy to support this strategy. So, for example, in the political space, Donald Trump has ordered NATO to come and open up the Strait of Hormuz, okay? And also, Donald Trump refuses to acknowledge the fact that this war is very unpopular back in America. In the economic space, what the Americans are trying to do is keep the price of oil low so that it does not disrupt the global economy. And they do that, of course, by unsectioning Russian and Iranian oil, which benefits the Russian and Iranian economies, okay? And in a narrative space, they're basically trying to tell the media to follow the party line. Donald Trump has threatened journalists that if you do not report this war is going well, then I might put you in prison. All right? So this is the American strategy, forcing the narrative, political, and economic spheres to conform to the military strategy. The Iranians have a different approach. The Iranians are using the military in order to impact the economic, political, and narrative spheres. All right, it's complete reverse. So the military strategy is calibrated in a certain way to benefit the Iranian economy, okay? So what I mean by that is that the military is strategically controlling the Strait of Hormuz so that Chinese ships can pass, right? Because Chinese ships are the main buyer of Iranian oil. Also, if you're willing to play ball like Japan or Qatar or Oman, they will also let your ships pass, okay? So this is being strategic. Politically, the Iranians are trying to split the Gulf states, right? They know that Saudi Arabia and UAE are committed to regime change in Iran, but they know that Qatar, Bahrain, Qatar and Oman are on the other side, okay? So they're trying to gain as much global leverage as possible within the GCC. And the narrative is they're trying to shape global opinion and trying to make everyone believe that they are on the right side of history. And most people believe that. In fact, you have a lot of Americans who are rooting for the Iranians to win, all right? So this is a very different, these are two very different strategies. All right, so let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both strategies. Okay, so from the American perspective, the fact that you have this approach of making the world conform to your military strategy basically means that you lack what we call reflection, okay? Meaning that you're not able to sit down with your strategists and discuss how this war is going and how to make changes. But the Iranians are able to do so because the military has to conform to the economic, political, and narrative strategies, okay? Second is flexibility. And what I mean by that is the military strategy, if it's not going well for the Americans, they lack the capacity to reflect and make changes. So what they do is they double down, okay? They accelerate the process of bombing in Iran, even though it's probably not getting them anywhere. Also, much more importantly, the Americans will choose much more self-destructive, desperate strategies, such as sending ground troops. It is possible by this weekend, ground troops will be sent into Iran, which most military analysts believe to be either countereffective or suicidal, okay? The Iranians, on the other hand, can adapt their military strategy to the economic and political realities. Okay, so for example, what they're doing now is they're charging tolls to cross the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, and the third difference is the idea of resilience. So, in other words, if you make the world and America conform to your military strategy, they won't support you. That means that if you're losing troops and you're losing equipment, it is very hard to replenish, resupply. Whereas the complete opposite in Iran, where because they are winning popular opinion, because their economy is becoming stronger in this process, because they're winning more political allies, they can actually draw on more support from the population, and they can also recruit foreign fighters and foreign support, foreign sympathy for their cause. Okay? So for these reasons, I believe that America is losing this war and that ultimately this war will be lost. When this will happen, we don't know, because America is an empire and they can actually drag us on for at least 20 years. All right? Okay. So now that we've discussed why America will probably lose this war, I want to now shift our focus to discuss how the world will change because of this war. What does the end of this war look like? And to do that, what's really important is to go back to our model of how the world works, okay? So remember, last week we discussed the structure of the world. And at the very core is the empire. Because the empire provides the muscle, the military might, to shape the contours of reality, okay? And then with the empire, you have the finance, okay? Finance includes City of London, Wall Street, Bank of International Settlements, and asset managers. And they are the game masters, okay? Okay, the empire is the muscle, but the finance are the ones who actually set the game. And then this creates the global economy, which is based on the US dollar, right? But you can't actually have people believing that this is the way the game is structured, because then people won't want to play the game. So what you do is you create an additional layer of multilateral organizations, what the Americans like to call the rules-based international order, including the UN and the WTO, okay, and other organizations. But this makes people believe that the way the world is structured is fair, open, and transparent. And you hide the finance and the empire behind multilateral organizations, okay? And then to justify this system, you have the culture, education, and media, which then creates the different legal infrastructure of different nations and the values as well. Okay? So this is how the world is organized. We also discuss how there are these organizations that are above the nation state, that are above the system in order to benefit from the system, to keep it going, but also to extract rent from it. And these include intelligence, crime, and science. We also discuss how the organizing forces behind intelligence, crime, and science are transnational capital, secret societies, as well as elite families. And we discuss how they are bound together by a concept called the occult, which we'll study later on, okay? But the idea of the occult, okay? So this is the structure of the world. Now, once this world is created, what you need to understand is that the people in the different spheres who benefit from the system, first and foremost, their interest is maintaining that status quo, okay?